Hey guys! Today I'll show you a science fiction thriller TV series named Hot Skull. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The drama begins in the future world where epidemics become varied and earphones become as essential as masks are today. Unlike droplet or respiratory transmission, a virus spread through verbal communication wreaks havoc. One day, an infected person bursts into a supermarket and catches a young boy who isn't wearing earphones. The woman begins babbling nonsense at him. In a critical moment, a man wearing glasses named Murat rushes forward, places his earphones on the boy's head, and then pushes him behind a guardrail. The infected person starts speaking to Murat, who smashes a glass panel and escapes the supermarket. He doesn't show any symptoms of infection, only experiencing fever-induced hallucinations. Murat might be the only person in the world immune to the virus. At that moment, police sirens are heard from the alley, and the man hurries away wearing a hat but no earphones. He cannot be caught by the police, for the current situation dictates that anyone who hears the babbling of an infected person without wearing earphones will contract the condition, turning into a zombie-like figure who can only utter nonsensical words. The Virus Defense Control Agency takes extreme measures in response, dividing the city into zones and establishing safe areas. All uninfected people are locked in quarantine zones, with the military stationed to guard them. Meanwhile, Murat returns home. Although he tries to keep things low-key, the incident at the supermarket has caused a stir. The police have identified potential carriers, and the antidote commander, Anton, is investigating viral outbreaks. His wife and child have both contracted the condition, which drives his search for a cure. 8 years ago, a Turkish team discovered a way to defeat the virus, but their research was lost in a lab fire. The only survivor of the fire was linguist Murat. Anton doesn't yet know that the man he's been searching for is Murat. The next day, Anton checks the supermarket surveillance footage and notices that the man with glasses doesn't show any infection symptoms. Instead, he is holding an ice pack on his head, seemingly trying to cool himself down. Anton later uncovers Murat's medical records and realizes that before he disappeared, Murat had frequently visited the emergency room due to high fevers. Anton suspects something and rushes back to the police station. Using thermal imaging, he checks the footage again, confirming that the man's head is still hot. He now believes the man could be Murat. Anton arranges for Murat's earphones to be retrieved for further analysis. The earphones are confirmed to be specially customized, distributed by the Pandemic Control Agency to the research team, with an employee ID matching Murat's. This confirms Anton's suspicions, and he reports it to his superior. However, his boss refuses to believe in immunity, dismissing the idea as a waste of resources and forbidding him from continuing the investigation. Elsewhere, Murat visits a friend with his mother, who is hiding a mental patient in their home. This patient had once worked on the research in the lab, but has now become delirious, occasionally letting out loud screams. His son, Arif, is determined to help his father recover and has been investigating the fire incident. He is convinced that Murat's colleague, a doctor, is still alive, and only by finding him can his father be cured. However, Murat believes the doctor has died. Arif does not lose hope. He stops Murat as he's about to leave and shows him a photo and a pill. The pill bears the same funnel pattern as the tattoo on the doctor's body. However, the pill was obtained from an infected person, so further investigation is impossible. Fortunately, Arif knows a well-connected person who can help him access the Pandemic Control Agency's system. Murat, burdened by his own hallucinations, hopes that finding the doctor will help him recover too. Murat sees a glimmer of hope and takes action. He and Arif meet the well-connected person, buy a login password, and infiltrate the Pandemic Agency's system. Internal documents confirm that the doctor is dead, with a photo of the body, but there's no funnel tattoo on the deceased's wrist. The body is likely a fake. Murat then checks his own file and realizes that the agency has been tracking him. However, the account Arif purchased lacks the permissions to delete records. Murat senses danger and decides to leave to take his mother away. But Anton has already traced his address and, ignoring his superior's warnings, rushes to Murat's home. Murat's mother is very clever. When Anton questions her, she gives vague answers, using the excuse of forgetting to turn off the gas, and quietly hangs a red Christmas tree ornament on the window. At this moment, Murat enters the apartment and immediately spots the red ornament. He stands frozen for a moment, then quickly turns and runs away. Murat knows the layout of the neighborhood like the back of his hand and manages to escape the Pandemic Control Agency's pursuit. He flees to another quarantine zone and seeks refuge with his friend. Murat explains his situation to his friend. He is being hunted by the agency due to his immunity. The friend agrees to let him stay. After thanking his friend, Murat leaves to take care of something. He needs to find out where the funnel pills came from. However, on the way, he encounters an explosion. It turns out that some residents, unhappy with the lockdown, blew open the barricades. Murat takes advantage of the chaos to escape. Meanwhile, the minister is giving a report. With the upcoming election, the higher-ups have ordered that public demonstrations be banned and security measures strengthened. After the meeting, a subordinate informs the minister that Anton has not followed orders and is still meddling. The minister tells his subordinate to keep an eye on Anton. At that moment, Anton sneaks into the chaotic quarantine zone and listens all night to the experimental tapes he found at Murat's house, convinced that Murat holds the key to curing the disease. He immediately goes to report his findings to the minister, but the minister refuses to let Anton continue the investigation. Instead, he orders Anton to arrest the protesters who caused the explosion. Anton leaves the office reluctantly, but he is resolute and not swayed by the minister's words. While searching Murat's home, Anton finds a prescription with the signature of Dr. E.K. He soon hears the name of Murat's friend on the tapes, and the full name includes E.K. Anton immediately orders a search for Murat's friend. Meanwhile, after Anton leaves, the minister pulls a file from his drawer. It's the lab records from years ago. It turns out that the one who set the fire to destroy the research center was the minister himself. Anton finds the address of Murat's friend, but he doesn't have time to act on it, as it's his son's birthday. He heads to the basement where his infected family members are locked up. The scene shifts back to Murat. Murat finds the shop where the doctor got his tattoo and asks about the pills. The shopkeeper doesn't know their origin, but at a crucial moment, his girlfriend mentions seeing those pills in Zone 6, an unregulated and chaotic area. The next day, Murat meets the well-connected person, paying his remaining savings to buy a pass. The individual also gives him a haircut and takes a new photo for his ID. Just as the transaction finishes, the well-connected person notices an alert. Pandemic control agents have arrived. The two quickly hide and use a buzzing razor to distract the guards, sneaking out of the factory. To get from the current quarantine zone to Zone 6, Murat must pass through 3 subway checkpoints. He successfully swipes his card to enter the station, but everywhere he looks, he sees his wanted posters. Even though he has cut his hair, his facial features are too distinctive. The guards are about to recognize him when a woman grabs Murat and tongue massages him, pretending they are a couple, allowing them to pass through the checkpoint. Murat, touched by the kiss, feels as if he's floating with joy. The woman, named Sue, leads Murat into Zone 6, a place of total chaos, where the other side of the barbed wire is full of infected individuals. They arrive at a gathering spot, and it turns out Sue is a member of the resistance group. They oppose the extreme measures of the Pandemic Control Agency and the inhumane treatment of the infected. The resistance is working on developing a vaccine to cure the infected, and they've made significant progress. If Murat helps, they are confident they can find a solution. However, Murat is still traumatized by the fire and is reluctant to get involved. Sue offers a tempting deal. If Murat agrees to help, the group will help him find the doctor. Thanks to their joint efforts, they soon find out that the pills come from a mafia-run hotel, and the two immediately head there. The hotel owner is very fond of music and is recording in his room. Murat's appearance interrupts his mood, and the owner immediately pulls out a gun. In a critical moment, Murat notices that the cassette tape inside the recording device is extremely valuable. He mentions that he knows a middleman who has stock of such tapes. Upon hearing this, the owner quickly changes his demeanor and enthusiastically invites them to sit down. Murat writes down the middleman's address for the owner. Just as he is about to ask about the pills, a woman enters and interrupts the conversation. She pulls out 2 bags of pills from her purse and sells them to the hotel owner. This short-haired woman is the contact for the pill supplier. Murat immediately chases after her, but the woman has already driven off. Meanwhile, Anton follows the clues to find his friend. Under interrogation, he learns that Murat is heading to Zone 6. Anton, claiming to investigate the explosion case, also heads to Zone 6 with his men. Little does he know, the minister's secretary sneaks into his house in the meantime and finds the tapes and documents related to Murat. Suddenly, there is a sound from the basement, and the secretary, curious, walks over to investigate. To her shock, she discovers 2 infected individuals. At that moment, moment, Anton arrives just in time, pointing his gun at the secretary's head. It turns out Anton had realized he was being watched. His subordinates had told him that the secretary came looking for him before they left, and the police immediately made the connection. They quickly rushed to the scene. The secretary warns Anton that the infected must be sent to the quarantine zone. Considering their years of working together, she says she won't report him to the higher-ups, but Anton cannot risk silencing her. He takes out a stack of documents to convince her. At the start of the Pandemic Control Agency ignored the lab's warnings and insisted that children wouldn't be infected, failing to provide timely protection. This led to a large number of children getting infected. The armed forces took away the infected, separating them from their families, and Anton's child unfortunately contracted the virus. His wife also became infected because she refused to leave their child. Later, the government concealed the lab's research to prevent public outrage. The fire at the Pandemic Control Agency and the lab must be connected. The secretary agrees to keep Anton's secret and takes the tape and map to report to the minister. She does not mention the infected people hidden by the minister. However, at the end of the report, she suggests investigating Murat. The minister doesn't say much at the time, but that evening he meets with the secretary under the pretense of work. He says he found clues in the tapes and asks her to help confirm them. The secretary doesn't suspect anything and immediately puts on the headphones. But instead of the expected information, she hears the babbling of an infected person. The minister quickly covers her ears, ensuring she becomes infected. After that, he takes her personal belongings and hastily leaves the scene. Meanwhile, after the supplier contact leaves, Murat and Sue return to their base. Murat needs to record his physical condition on tape, so he asks Sue to join him in going to the market. However, they run into the supplier contact again. She hands Murat a phone and says she will make a call. If he doesn't answer, he will never see the doctor again. Fortunately, Murat doesn't miss the call, but the woman doesn't reveal the doctor's location. Instead, she invites him to a secret hideout, where they play a game of hide and seek. The two enter the hideout, and Murat picks up an envelope on the table. It contains a riddle that must be solved to proceed. The reason Murat is immune to the virus is because the doctor experimented on him. The headaches and hallucinations are side effects of the immunity, but they also made Murat extraordinarily intelligent. These riddles are a test designed by the supplier contact. Murat lives up to expectations, solving each puzzle she sets, until he reaches an abandoned shipyard where he finds the ferry that the doctor frequently used. Just then, the woman calls and tells him to wait at the back of the boat for someone to meet him. Murat follows the instructions, and sure enough, a man emerges a few minutes later. The two of them take off their coats and carefully check for listening devices. After the check, the man and woman are sent in opposite directions, still wearing identification badges. When Murat is let out of the car, he finds himself in a large arena surrounded by betting spectators. They are gathered around a maze made of shipping containers inside which a large group of infected individuals is trapped. The challengers must find the exit of the maze in the shortest time possible. The longer it takes, the higher the chance of infection. The spectators hold long poles and use them to move the challengers' earphones, making the challenge even more difficult. At this point, the supplier contact approaches Murat and tells him that Sue has been thrown into the maze. Murat is given two choices. First, leave with her now to meet the doctor. Second, take on the maze challenge and save his loved one. Murat, of course, chooses to save Sue. He jumps into the maze, urgently searching for her. Not long after entering, his earphones are knocked off. Although Murat is immune, the fever and hallucinations are still distressing. Soon, the countdown ends, and a new batch of infected individuals is thrown into the maze. Murat is increasingly disturbed by the infected and collapses to the ground in pain. Suddenly, a pair of hands grabs him, pulling him out of the hallucinations. It's Sue, and standing next to her is the doctor. He's alive. Murat punches him in a fit of anger and proceeds to beat him up. As he meets with his colleague again, the mystery of the past begins to unravel. At the start of the virus outbreak, the doctor, as the head of the lab, was dedicated to virus research. One day, the minister brought in a document filled with nonsense, intending to have the lab justify the Pandemic Control Agency's massacre of the infected. The doctor, of course, refused to sign and kicked the minister out of the lab. However, a few weeks later, the minister was promoted and stopped the virus research, halting all scientific activities and even attempting to take away all of the doctor's work. The two argued violently. The minister later had the doctor framed and set the lab on fire after dousing it with alcohol. Fortunately, the doctor regained consciousness just in time, managed to escape, and threw his ID next to his assistant's body, faking his own death. After the incident, the doctor hid in Zone 6 and didn't contact anyone. Meanwhile, while making progress here, the minister discovered Anton's secret, capturing his wife and child and forcing him to go to Zone 6 to find Murat. He also sent his loyal henchman to keep an eye on Anton. Before leaving, the henchman went to visit Murat's mother, trying to find clues. Since Murat had hidden his notes in a flower pot at home, when Murat's mother saw him moving the pot, she panicked. Anton, keenly aware of the odd behavior, stopped his men's actions. He quietly approached Murat's mother and told her that he meant no harm to Murat, warning her that if Murat was caught by the Pandemic Control Agency, the consequences would be unimaginable. Murat's mother decided to trust him, and before being taken by the henchman, subtly hinted to Anton how to contact Murat. That evening, as Murat and Sue were preparing to go to the organization's lab, Sue seemed preoccupied. The radicals within the organization were planning a violent uprising. She intercepted an encrypted message, and Murat patiently helped Sue decrypt it, unaware that the Pandemic Control Agency had already arrived in Zone 6. Anton intentionally separated from the main team and left a clue for Murat, the red Christmas tree ornament. When Murat saw it, he realized something was wrong and immediately pulled Sue into an alley to hide. When the henchman checked, he found nothing unusual. Murat couldn't figure out who else knew about the signal system he invented. At that moment, the doctor arrived by car to safely take them to the organization's lab. Murat had been desperately searching for the doctor to resolve his hallucination issues. He wanted to give up his immunity and return to normal life, so he accepted a brain MRI scan. The organization could also use this data to conduct in-depth research on the virus. However, when Sue learned that Murat's goal was only to get rid of his immunity and reset his brain, she was disappointed. She had thought Murat was a hero who could save everyone from danger. Just then, a subordinate reported that they had found a high-level infected person. The nearby ordinary infected individuals were affected by its presence and had become unusually calm, far beyond anyone's understanding. This indicated the immense power of the high-level infected person. When the door was knocked for the capture, the person who walked out startled Murat. This was not a high-level infected person, but the world's first infected, David. Murat was infected by him and had received treatment from the doctor. David's abilities were extraordinary. Unlike ordinary infected individuals who babble incessantly, David could control other infected individuals and force them to calm down. David's appearance makes Murat anxious to reset his brain, but with the limited data at hand, the surgery is difficult to perform. Meanwhile, the news of Murat's mother being captured reaches Zone 6, and Murat must save her. On the other side, Anton finds the flower pot and, using the information inside, contacts Arif to ask him to deliver a message to Murat. Arif requests something in return, the list of pandemic control agents from the old station, as his girlfriend was abused there. Anton agrees to the deal. Soon, Arif delivers the message to Murat, which includes a green pine tree. Murat then realizes that it was Anton who had warned him that day. The two meet in Zone 6. Anton tells Murat that his mother is temporarily safe, but they can no longer trust the Pandemic Control Agency, and he wants to team up with Murat. Anton offers to help rescue his mother, but Murat has another plan in mind, although he does need Anton's help. He prepares to turn himself in to the Pandemic Control Agency and asks Anton to relay the message. Next, Murat goes to the doctor's lab to gather some chemicals and pills, then heads to the Pandemic Control Agency to surrender. The agents immediately take him to the interrogation room, and Murat asks for a glass of water. He throws a tissue into the glass. Having worked at the agency before, he's well aware of the ventilation system. Murat's surrender time coincides perfectly with the system's activation time. The well-connected person infiltrates under the guise of a pest control company, using the ventilation system to release anesthetic gas. Murat covers his nose and mouth with the tissue, and the agents collapse one by one. Murat seizes the opportunity to rescue his mother. However, the henchman stumbles after him, and in the critical moment, Anton tackles him, helping Murat escape. This exposes Anton's position. Of course, the minister won't let a traitor go and plans to throw Anton to his family and turn him into an infected. Unexpectedly, Murat calls and says he knows the secret plan of the resistance organization, which is planning to attack the Pandemic Control Agency. If the minister wants more details, he'll have to send Anton. With the election around the corner, the minister can't afford mistakes and is forced to compromise. Once Murat sets everything up, he notifies the minister to have Anton meet him at the shipyard at 3 p.m. The minister has hostages, so he's not worried about Anton betraying him. He orders Anton to get the intelligence and immediately kill Murat. What's more, the minister has a backup plan. He instructs his man to secretly monitor the situation and, if anything goes wrong, to kill both Murat and Anton. As soon as Anton boards the ship, he subtly signals that someone is watching them. But Murat is prepared. He tells Anton to brace himself and presses the intercom button. The entire ship begins to move, and the henchmen and others fall due to inertia. When they reach the cabin, Murat and Anton have already left. The well-connected person and others capture the pandemic control agents. Murat then calls the minister, offering to cooperate. If the minister agrees to allow the public protests, Murat will reveal all the details of the attack plan. The minister reluctantly agrees. However, once he hangs up, his true nature is revealed. He orders the death of Anton's family, but everyone keeps their distance from the infected, and no one takes the time to verify the prisoners' identities. The mother and son locked in the prison have already been swapped. Anton's family is now safe and sound, and the minister, unaware, prepares for the new lab's opening ceremony. He takes the opportunity to report to his superiors, hoping they will approve the protest. He gives a bunch of hollow reasons, claiming that the protest could help find supporters of the resistance organization. The superiors approve the minister's request, and that night the Pandemic Control Agency announces that they've approved the public protests. The people cheer, but the radical member points out that this is clearly a trap to gather them all and take them down at once. Sue chooses to take the risk and trust the Pandemic Control Agency. She persuades the radical member to call off the attack, with both sides taking a step back. If the protest proceeds peacefully the next day, the radical member agrees to halt the attack. On the day of the lab's opening ceremony, the citizens gather in the city center. Although there are a few minor incidents along the way, the protest is completed peacefully. People gather to mourn the deceased, and Sue finally fulfills her wish. Upon hearing this, Murat immediately contacts the minister, who, having not interfered with the protest, now demands that Murat hand over the information. Murat discloses the time and location of the attack. By this point, the radicals have already agreed to call off the attack. However, the radical suicide squad is still on standby, and the leader receives a call from the radical member who, according to her agreement with Sue, orders him to stop the mission. Unwilling to give up, the leader lies to the squad, claiming the plan is still on. The radical member senses something is wrong and rushes to consult with Murat. At the same time, with Arif still not returning, Murat guesses that the squad hasn't given up and contacts Anton for help. They manage to intercept the radicals planning to kill themselves and successfully stop the misguided attack. Meanwhile, the minister waits for a long time, only to hear that his agents have been captured. He realizes he's been tricked. Reluctant to give up on the opportunity to incite conflict, he orders his subordinates to plant bombs in the lab. After the ribbon-cutting ceremony, the minister invites his rival to tour the lab, while he himself leaves, citing the need to maintain security. Murat and Sue, unaware of the changes, are celebrating the success of the protest. After spending so much time together, they have developed feelings for each other. Suddenly, a huge explosion erupts, just as the minister had planned. He blows up the lab, eliminating his election rival and creating a convenient excuse to declare war on the resistance organization. The minister immediately releases a statement claiming the organization carried out a terrorist attack, causing numerous casualties and destroying the research lab. Authorities are now preparing to take action against the organization. The situation intensifies rapidly. With official authorization, the minister, leading a large force, storms into Zone 6 to conduct indiscriminate arrests, enforcing a curfew after 9:30 p.m. Anton, aware of a hiding spot where the family can be safe, prepares to meet up with Murat and the others. However, they run into a large-scale sweep by the Pandemic Control Agency. They take refuge in an alley with only one agent following them. Unfortunately, Sue accidentally triggers the vehicle's alarm. To protect them, Arif rushes out to divert attention, but is shot by the agents. Murat leaps forward, grabbing the gun and chasing off the agent. The gunfire draws the attention of nearby residents. They quickly lift Arif into a car and rush him to the doctor for emergency care. Unfortunately, Arif's injuries are too severe, and the doctor is unable to help. Murat contacts Anton for assistance. During this time, Sue receives an anonymous phone call, and her expression changes noticeably. Murat notices but focuses on saving Arif. Anton's car arrives just in time and transports Arif to medical care within the resistance organization, who successfully removes the bullet. However, Arif's condition worsens. Within hours, his vital signs start to weaken. Arif, aware that his time is running out, calls Murat to his bedside. The young boy leaves only one last message, saying he doesn't want to die. He had rushed out to save others because he had promised to cure his father. If Murat, the only immune person, were to die, humanity's hope would be lost forever. Murat can no longer deceive himself. He removes his earphones and storms into David's sealed chamber, demanding to know the origin of the virus, but David remains silent. In truth, the doctor's experiment could not create another immune person because of a unique connection between Murat and David that no one else could have. Only Murat holds the key to humanity's salvation. He decides to join the resistance organization to help develop a cure and fight against the pandemic control agency. With Zone 6 falling, they must find a new hideout. The next day, the group holds a funeral for Arif. They split into smaller groups, preparing to lay low for a while, but escaping Zone 6 proves difficult. The Pandemic Control Agency arrives and immediately begins their crackdown. Murat insists on bringing David along and refuses to have him anesthetized. The group gets into Anton's car to leave, but they are intercepted by the Pandemic Control Agency. Murat hopes that David can help. He takes the bag the agent is trying to use to gag him. Just as the agents move in to capture them, David starts speaking. His abilities far exceed those of other infected. Even the agents with earphones cannot avoid being infected. The group keeps their distance and takes down the unaffected agents. They get into the car and continue on their way to the docks to meet the well-connected person. The person has prepared a boat as Murat requested, but in a crucial moment, the doctor betrays them and informs the minister of Murat's plan. Fortunately, the well-connected person is quick-witted. After realizing that the dock is under control by the Pandemic Control Agency, he immediately alerts Murat. The group switches to a waterplane, activating a second escape plan. The waterplane arrives quickly, and the pilot informs them that the Pandemic Control Agency plans to move the quarantine zone from Zone 4 to Zone 5. Sue's face falters at the news. Anton, needing to find his family in Zone 4, watches as the others board the plane and depart. As the plane takes off, the recording left by Murat echoes across the sky in a broadcast. He explains to the public that the fire at the lab, the explosion, and the halted virus research were all the work of the Pandemic Control Agency. In the name of the resistance organization, he is officially declaring war on the agency, fighting for all the deceived people and for hope. The condition of disease can be cured, and he will find a way. At that moment, Sue's phone rings. Wearing her headphones, she doesn't notice. Murat recognizes the suspicious number. There have been 20 missed calls. He secretly answers the call and is stunned to discover that the voice on the other end belongs to the minister of the Pandemic Control Agency. Murat looks at Sue in shock. This season ends here. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.